Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Africa News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the head teacher of a Nigerian school from which over 100 girls were abducted by Islamic militants says the army is not telling the truth after it said most of the girls had been freed. She and parents are still desperately worried about the 107 children they believe are still being held. Also, Guinea-Bissau's in for a runoff vote next month after no presidential candidate wins an outright majority. The favourite says that he wants open dialogue with the coup-prone military. It backs his rival, though. And it looks like disillusion is rife amongst Algerian voters. Our correspondent tells us that she's not met much enthusiasm for the presidential poll on election day. Hailing President Bouteflika makes a rare public outing to the ballot box. First out, the military is not telling the truth. So says the head teacher of a Nigerian school from which 129 girls were abducted by suspected Boko Haram Islamist extremists on Tuesday. Well, today, the army claimed that all but 8 of the girls had been freed, but their teacher says 107 students are still missing. Parents in the town of Chibok in Borno State have kept up the search and are still frantically trying to get answers from authorities. Some say misleading official reports on their children's freedom are insulting and have shattered their hopes. Well, the defence minister's yet to respond to the scandal. Our correspondent, Aminu Abubakar, is in Kano. He tells us more about the discrepancy.
Since the abduction of the girls, the military has come under so much pressure, and there has been so much condemnation and outrage from within and outside Nigeria, and the military has been, under pressure to act quickly, to rescue these girls, and it's just to ease the pressure and also to launder its battered image that led the military to claim that all but 8 of the children had been rescued, which turned out to be not true, based on what presidents or what parents and then the principal of the school also said. They all refuted this claim by the military.
Now, this scandal undermines the army's claims to be successfully containing the extremist uprising, and on a particularly bloody week for attacks as well.
Yeah, it's been quite a bloody week, for Nigeria, because it's like, and the military, and that's why it's a big scandal for the military, which has been claiming that it's within the war against Boko Haram, and has been claiming that the spike in the spike in violence in recent weeks was due to the pressure mounted on the Boko Haram insurgents by military offensive. But now these attacks and then the abduction have turned out not to be true. Have turned out that really these offensive by the military, is not effective, and there more needs to be done. To contain the insurgency, and perhaps because people had been raising so much eyebrow given the huge budget, being expended in the war against Boko Haram, which is not giving the desired result. And the military is now under so much pressure, to do more, to justify all the money being spent, on it to tackle the insurgency.
Aminu Abubakar there from Kano. Now, it's D-Day for Algeria. The run-up to today's presidential election was closely watched and controversial as opposition accusations of planned vote rigging mounted. While ailing 77-year-old Abdelaziz Bouteflika is gunning for a 4th term in office, his top rival, Ali Benflis, says it's time for change. Bouteflika is expected to win, despite having brought in few of his promised reforms. Catherine Norris-Trent is in Algiers for us. She tells us that the turnout so far looks to have been far from impressive.
We've been hearing from the Interior Ministry here in Algeria, and they've been giving us the turnout figures up to 5 p.m. local time. These are official figures. The latest we're hearing overall, they're saying 37% of voters turned out to the polls. And in some region, that score is way lower. In the Kabyle region, in the east of the country, where there's been dissatisfaction voiced with the government, the ruling party, and President Bouteflika, some cities are recording turnout figures there of 15 or 18% by 5 p.m. Now, these figures are much lower than the last presidential election in 2009, and they're also being criticised already by various parts of the opposition who say that they're being inflated, that even these lower figures are much higher than what they've seen. And I have to say, we've been out and about in polling stations in Algiers, in the capital today, and there really weren't long lines of voters turning out. There were empty rooms, people turning out to vote in dribs and drabs, a lot of people staying away. We've spoken to young people in the capital, and they are saying they just simply see no point in turning out to vote. They see this election as a foregone conclusion, so many of them staying away.
Catherine Norris-Trent there for us in Algiers. In other news, the favourite in Guinea-Bissau's presidential election runoff says he wants to keep the channels of communication with the army open. José Mario Vaz will face Nuno Gomes Nabiam in May's second-round vote. Nabiam is backed by the military. Voters are worried that it could launch another coup if its preferred candidate doesn't win out.
The favourite, José Mario Vaz, is well ahead. This former finance minister won 40% of the vote. He's the candidate of the PAIGC, Guinea-Bissau's main party, the one that fought for the country's independence from Portugal in 1974. In the runoff, Vaz will face Nuno Gomes Nabiam, who's backed by the army. He garnered 25% of the vote and used to chair the Civil Aviation Agency. After the election, ECOWAS, the regional bloc, called this week on the EU and other countries to lift their sanctions, which are crippling the impoverished nation's economy.
These elections took place in an atmosphere that was calm, friendly and fair. We ask the international community to lift its sanctions and join ECOWAS to support this country.
Paulo Gomes came third with 10%, a good result for this political newcomer who used to work for the World Bank. Last Sunday, voters also elected their members of parliament. The main party, the PAIGC, won an absolute majority in the first round. Turnout reached a record 80% as voters expressed their desire for change. The country has been rocked by military coups. The last one took place only 2 years ago. And Guinea-Bissau has, this last decade, become a cocaine trafficking hub.
The son of Senegal's former president's to be tried in June for corruption. A former minister in Abdoulaye Wade's government, Karim Wade's accused of having used graft to accumulate a fortune of almost $1 billion.
45-year-old Karim Wade is alleged to have acquired companies in real estate valued at $1 billion by corrupt means. Dakar's anti-corruption court ordered Wade to remain in custody. His lawyer denounced this decision.
We are outraged by this manipulation, by this conspiracy, by this manipulation of justice for personal score settling.
Karim Wade has been in prison for exactly 1 year. He considers himself to be a political hostage of the new authorities in Senegal. Wade refused to answer questions from investigating judges. Under Senegalese law, investigators would normally have had a maximum of 6 months to investigate Wade before sending him to trial. But the anti-corruption court extended the pre-trial detention period by 6 months. Wade has consistently denied any wrongdoing and said his wealth was acquired legitimately. The news that the former president's son will be tried in June was the talk of the town in Dakar on Thursday.
There's a political problem on the inside. We try to deny it, but it's true. It's not politics, it's the court. It's justice, so the truth will be told.
Karim Wade will be tried in 2 months along with other accused. The anti-corruption court dismissed the cases of 2 close associates of Karim Wade who had been accused of complicity.
Former Liberian President Jude Bryant has died. For 2 years, the 65-year-old led the peacetime government that followed 2 devastating back-to-back civil wars, which ran from 1989 to 2003. He took over after disgraced President Charles Taylor fled and played a leading role in trying to build consensus in a fractured Liberia. Our Katerina Vitozzi tells us more.
I'm standing outside the John F. Kennedy Memorial Medical Center in central Monrovia. It was here late Wednesday afternoon that Jude Bryant was pronounced dead after suffering a brief illness. The 65-year-old was regarded as a unifying figure in post-war Liberia. A little earlier, I spoke to former interim president Professor Amos Sawyer to ask how Bryant will be remembered.
The lessons of tolerance, creating win-win situations, of compromising and consensus building that he introduced and taught us, I think should ever be with us as we move to the future.
The President, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, has declared an official 15-day mourning period in respect of Jude Bryant. Despite claims of embezzlement and corruption, which did somewhat mar his leadership of the interim government, the current government say that he was a custodian of peace that helped bring about peaceful democratic elections in 2005.
Well, that wraps up African News from me, but stay with us, short break and more news and headlines coming up.